Hello and welcome to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. On this programme we hear from both Arab and Jewish believers living in Israel. By listening to their stories, it's possible to catch a glimpse of what life is like for them living as they do in a very complex situation where trouble and conflict are never far away. These stories are full of hope, however, because they illustrate how peace and reconciliation are possible through a shared faith in Jesus. My guest today was brought up as an Israeli, although he's not Jewish. His name is Yoyakim Figueras, and today he lives in Arad, a town in the Negev in southern Israel, with his wife and their 6 children, where Yoyakim is the pastor of a Messianic congregation. In this programme, the first of 3 that feature Yoyakim's story, we hear about his unusual family background.
My mother is Dutch, my father is Spanish, actually Catalan Spanish, and they met in Israel. My father comes from a very Catholic background. He was actually a Catholic monk in a monastery high up in the Montserrat Mountains near Barcelona. And he found his way to Israel somehow and found his way out of the monastery. And here in Israel he met my mother, who comes from a Dutch Reformed background, a very Zionistic Christian house in Holland. They were hiding a Jewish friend, a woman, a good friend of the family. They were hiding her during the Holocaust after her husband, who was actually working together with my grandfather, was already taken to Auschwitz, and later on they learned that he died there a short time after he was taken there. But anyway, she was with the family, and that's the family my mother grew up with. And anyway, she came to Israel, married my dad, 5 children. An interesting story is that both my parents received Israeli citizenship, which is unusual for non-Jewish people. And interesting that a story that I heard only much later was that this Jewish she became already family member of my mother's family. My mother urged her again and again, you should come to Israel. It's not me who should be living in Israel. It's your place. That's your land. And she said, no, the only friends I have are here in Holland. And of course, my parents were already in the process of asking for citizenship. Now, the amazing thing is that when this Jewish relative died, Jewish friend died, the very next day my mother received her Israeli citizenship. So it's like God saying to her, it was the old woman's place here to be in the land. Mrs. Bunning, that was her name, but you got it instead, and I'm giving it to you. So here we are, 5 children growing in Israel as Israelis, non-Jews, We were raised in a believing house, believing in Jesus, in the Bible, the Tanakh and the New Testament, Old and New Testament, and speaking Hebrew as our main language. And here we are. I did as a regular Israeli citizen, I did my army service. I studied social work, and from here to there, the Lord brought me to a place where I had to obey Him and say, okay, I will be in your ministry. And really, it's too long to tell, but here I am pastoring a small congregation in Arad, where we have Jews and Gentiles together, very different kinds of people. We had, through the years, we have an Arab sister from Muslim background that came to faith in Jesus and found life. she's with us. We had people from ultra-Orthodox background come to faith, and they were part of us for a while. Now they moved to another place. We have new immigrants and Sabras. We have it's quite a mix. Every Shabbat we are now about 40 people meeting on a Shabbat morning meeting. That's when we meet. We meet on a Saturday, Sabbath, and always we have translations to other languages, mostly to English. But we would have also translation to Spanish, sometimes to Arabic, to different languages. You just name it, Russian, we will probably have it there.
Can I just ask you, Yoyakim, when you were growing up, did you feel Israeli or did you feel an outsider?
I always felt Israeli. My parents. I was Israeli. I wasn't a Dutch citizen and I wasn't a Spanish citizen. My parents had to, unlike Jewish people who make Aliyah, who come to Israel according to a special law that there is in Israel, the law of return, it's called, that every Jew from around the world can come to Israel and ask for citizenship. The Israeli government will give him citizenship. Now, my parents did not become Israelis according to the law of return. So they had actually to give up their previous nationalities. They had to give their countries, the Ministry of Interior, the previous passports, the Dutch and the Spanish, in order to become Israelis. They really had to give up their past identity and become Israelis. So that's what we were. My parents did not speak Spanish nor Dutch with each other. They spoke Hebrew. So there are many families in Israel that come from, that are new immigrants and that might speak a different language at home. We spoke Hebrew, and I felt Israeli from the beginning. I always felt different. I was very aware of the fact that I was not Jewish. And people around me were aware of that, but it didn't make a difference. I was an Israeli citizen. From time to time, my parents were worried about our identity, where we will grow up, whether we will have an identity crisis, and they thought maybe when we were children, to move to Holland or to Canada. And I was one of those that insisted, no, we're staying in Israel, that's what we are.
So you attempted to leave but never actually did. And you met your wife here, who is Jewish.
Yeah, my wife, Debbie, she's Jewish. She was born in Nahariya to Jewish parents. Her mother is a Jew from London. Her father is a Jew from a mixed background, actually from mainly Iraqi Jewish background. But his story is like, the Jews they were like nomads. They were moving from here to there. Many times they didn't have a home where they stayed for many years. So he was born in Japan to an Iraqi Jewish businessman that had business in Japan and then grew up in India and then Egypt. But at a certain point after the State of Israel was established, the Iraqis notified him that his Iraqi citizenship is cancelled. So then the British gave him a British passport. But and there in England he met my mother-in-law, and they made Aliyah to Israel. They immigrated to Israel.
Now, as you mentioned, Yoyakim, you qualified as a social worker, you trained as a social worker, but here today, along with your wife and your 6 children, you're living in Arad, here in the Negev, which is an ultra-Orthodox city, and you're pioneering a congregation. So I have to ask, why Arad, which is one of the hardest places in Israel to have a congregation?
Well, in fact, Arad is not exactly an ultra-Orthodox city. Arad is known for it being a secular city, really. There are about 25,000 people in Arad. But there is a growing minority of ultra-Orthodox, a certain group of ultra-Orthodox in Arad. Now, the latest I heard is about 2,000. So Arad is really not an ultra-Orthodox town, but we see it is going towards growing numbers of ultra-Orthodox from the Gur sect, the Gur Hasidic group of ultra-Orthodox Judaism. It's one sect amongst those who you would identify them wearing those black hats, black coats. They would have their socks, their trousers stuck in their socks. There are different ways of identifying different sects in ultra-Orthodox Judaism. That's the group we have there, the Gur ultra-Orthodox group. It's interesting, they come from, I think either Poland or Russia. I think Poland. Their origin is in the city of Gur Calvaria, as I understand. And Gur, I don't know what it meant, but Calvaria, that means Calvary. And who knows, we have faith that God will do something amongst them with revealing them or opening some of them their eyes to understand who the Messiah is, for whom they're still waiting.
Yoyakim Figueras sharing his unusual story. And next week we'll hear more from Yoyakim when he explains more about his life and work in Arad. You're listening to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher. If you'd like to find out more and prayerfully support both Jewish and Arab believers living in the Holy Land, then let me tell you about the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund. We are a small charity based in the UK. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please either visit our website www.olivetreefund.org, where you'll find articles, programmes and news about our next tour, or write to me, Julia Fisher, at the Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund, PO Box 850, Horsham, RH12 9GA in the UK. Join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.